The chair lays out SJR 27 as a matter of postponed business on second reading. The clerk will read the resolution.
SJR number 27 by Huffman, proposing a constitutional amendment regarding the membership of the State Commission on Judicial Conduct and the authority of the Commission and the Texas Supreme Court to more effectively sanction judges and justices for judicial misconduct.
The chair recognizes Mr. Leach to explain the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the State Commission on Judicial Conduct is the commission in Texas created to protect the public, to promote public confidence in the integrity, independence, competence, and impartiality of the judiciary, and to encourage judges to maintain high standards of conduct. SJR 27 by Senator Huffman, passed by the legislature and then approved by the Texas voters, if passed, I should say, would amend our state constitution to adjust the membership of the State Commission on Judicial Conduct and to adjust the authority of the Commission and the Texas Supreme Court to more effectively sanction judges and justices for judicial misconduct. Members, the SJR before you changes the makeup of the Commission to be 13 total members, 6 appointed by the Texas Supreme Court with the advice and the consent of the Texas Senate, and 7 appointed by the Governor with the advice and consent of the Senate. SJR 27 also allows for 1 private sanction to be issued for non-criminal offenses. Further, the SJR adds a requirement that an appointed master that hears and takes evidence on the matters to report back not only to the Commission but also to the Supreme Court. Further, if after a formal hearing or after considering the record and report of the master, if the Commission finds not only good cause but also that that person engaged in willful or persistent conduct that is clearly inconsistent with the proper performance of a judge's duties, that they shall issue a public reprimand and may recommend to a review tribunal the removal or the retirement of the person. I do have a floor amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Wu, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Representative Leach, the change in this SJR would put 7 of the 13 commissioners in the hands of the governor. This is a commission that oversees a different branch of government. Why is putting that much power in the executive branch to oversee a different branch of government, why is that a good public policy?
Well, you're actually not correct about that. While they are appointed by the governor, or I should say you're not telling the whole story, to be fair to you. While they're appointed by the governor, they have to receive the advice and the consent of the Senate.
Sure. How often has the Senate not approved the governor's choices?
The author is not advised.
Okay, it's not very often, or at all.
That's because he makes good appointments.
Or at least appointments that the senators are afraid of contravening.
I think he makes, having been a former judge himself, former Supreme Court justice, former Attorney General. I think the governor, when it comes to the judicial system and the appointments that he's made, by the way, not only Republicans but some Democrats all across the state have been resoundingly positive and successful.
Of the 13 seats, only 2 of the seats will actually be held by trial level judges or appellate level judges. Is that enough peer oversight? I mean, most of the complaints about judges are of their actions in trial. Why shouldn't there be a majority of trial judges in this commission?
Because that's the way we wrote the bill, and that's the way Senator Huffman and our counterparts in the Senate thought that it should be, and so...
no reason, just because?
I'm sorry?
There's not a specific policy reason, it's just that's the way we drafted it.
I think that that's the proper... I think that's the way it should be. I think that's good public policy. I believe that this SJR is necessary, not only necessary, but beneficial for the state.
Sure.
In the way that it's written now, and would encourage members to vote for it today and the people of Texas to vote for it in November.
So, just to be clear, that this commission will review the actions of judges. Most, if not the vast majority of the complaints about their actions are based on decisions at trial, but having only 2 of the 13 judges be trial experienced judges, trial judges, you're saying that is good policy?
Yes.
Okay. This bill also says that 2 of the members will be appointed by the state bar, but these must also be cleared by the Senate, right? What's the point of letting the state bar choose their own members if the legislative branch has to approve it?
Where are you reading that, Representative Wu?
I'm sorry, I'm just working off the questions. I don't have the bill in front of me.
Well, I'm sorry, did I understand?
Is there a provision that says the state bar of Texas is allowed to appoint
Show me where in the bill you're talking about, Representative Wu.
What? I'm sorry, I don't know your bill as well as you do.
You're asking me questions about a specific provision of the bill. I would like to know what provision of the bill you speak of, because I don't believe that provision exists.
Okay. So you're saying there's no provision in your bill that allows the state bar to choose 2 of the commissioners?
Correct.
Okay.
Show me where you're talking about.
Okay.
No, Representative Wu, if you want to show me where you're talking about, it's not in the bill before the body right now.
If I'm mistaken, then I'm mistaken.
You're mistaken.
SJR 27 also requires the commission to suspend any judge who is indicted for a felony or even some misdemeanors before guilt is proven.
So Representative Wu, I'm going to ask you respectfully, because I don't believe you've read the joint resolution. So as you continue on in your line of questioning, which I'm happy and eager to answer your questions, but I'm asking you to point me to a specific provision of the JR that you're talking about.
All right. Very good. Look, you can answer my questions. You can not answer my questions.
I don't think you know what you. I don't think you.
That's fine. That's fine.
I don't think you've read the bill.
That's completely fine. You can answer my questions or not answer my questions. It's totally your prerogative.
You can read the bill or not read the bill. That's
SJR
totally
27
your
requires the
prerogative.
commission to suspend judges if they have been indicted for felonies or some misdemeanors. What are these safety procedures to make sure that for people who have been politically persecuted, for people who have been indicted but their charges have been dropped, what are the safeguards and make sure that their rights are protected in this process?
The JR speaks for itself, Representative Wu.
Okay.
You should read it.
So there's no provision.
You should read the bill,
Okay.
which you clearly have not done.
Okay. The commission would now impose public sanctions without first sending a case to a formal master to review. How does this proposal reconcile faster discipline with the judge's right to a full evidentiary hearing?
Asked and answered. You should read the bill, which you clearly have not done.
Okay. No worries. SJR 27 also tweaks the 3-judge tribunals that review commission's decisions. Are those panels still randomly selected, or could a partisan leadership exert more control over them, meaning that maybe just all of the Judge Abbott's appointees decide that they want to do one thing? What is the protection against that?
Representative Wu, I've answered the questions that you've asked. I'm not going to get into a political debate about your feelings regarding Governor Abbott.
Very good.
You can go to Twitter for
All the current commissioners' terms would end on December 31st, 2025. The Supreme Court would appoint an entire new slate that starts January 1st, 2026. Why does this bill wipe the board completely clean instead of staggering the turnover so that not all the appointments are made at the same time?
So, Representative Wu, I think why I'm taking issue with your line of questioning is because the bill is very simple. You have clearly not read the JR, and there are other members that want to ask questions who have read the JR. And what I would suggest, if you're willing to do, is to go sit at your desk, read the JR, and come back to the mic if you have questions about specific provisions of the bill. I am not going to waste the body's time engaging in a political debate with you about your feelings, personal or political, regarding Governor Abbott.
Okay. With the 7 seats that are for lay members, what vetting will prevent political influence or activists from turning public membership into a partisan echo chamber?
I've answered your questions, Representative Wu.
I'm sorry?
I've answered your questions.
Okay. The existing bar on commissioners hailing from the same Court of Appeals district has been stricken from the bill.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
For what?
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Leach.
Mr. Leach to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment addresses concerns brought to us with the language of the committee substitute. First, the amendment clarifies that the 6 individuals appointed by the Supreme Court might be or must be a judge or justice. Second, the amendment reorganizes Section 1 of the bill so that the bill language flows correctly. And third, the amendment in front of you adds language in the temporary provision of the bill to provide a transition window of a 6-month phase-out to address existing complaints and commissioners to help ensure an easier transition and to mitigate any potential backlog. I move adoption of the
Mr. Speaker,
amendment.
Ms. Gervin Hawkins, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for a couple questions?
Yes, I'd be glad
The
to.
gentleman yields.
Thank you, Representative Leach. I just want to be clear. Today, the governor appoints the members of the commission without Senate approval. What this does, this HJR, it says that the governor now has to get the Senate's approval.
That's not accurate.
Okay,
They all receive
help me
Senate.
understand.
They receive, it's the same process. They receive consent and approval by the Texas Senate today.
Awesome. Does your amendment speaks to a jurisdictional spread? So can we say that all these members, say, would come from Austin, or do it address that at all in terms of being more statewide so we can have representation across the state? Does
Yeah.
it address that at all?
That's a great question, Representative Gervin Hawkins. The bill does not speak to the geographical location of the who would be appointed to serve on the commission. I can't imagine that they're all going to be from one location, whether it's Austin or Dallas or Houston. They will be, as they are now, spread out across the state. But there is no geographical restriction or requirement in the JR in front of you.
And it doesn't address any type of specialization and/or demographic profile. It's just who it has to be a judge or a justice that applies, is selected, interviewed and selected. I'm assuming.
They don't apply. They don't fill out an
Oh,
application.
they're appointed.
They're appointed. Right.
Okay, thank you for that. And so they're appointed, and then once they're appointed, they get Senate confirmation. Senate confirmation. I kept reading in there
Yeah.
that it was a Senate
Yes,
approval.
that's correct.
Okay. And so, based on your knowledge of this process, would you say that the justices that have been selected, or do you know, you may not even be advised, have they been across the state of Texas? I'm looking at
Yes.
the historical context.
Yes, and I do know, or the committee that I serve as chair on, we have jurisdiction over the State Commission on Judicial Conduct and have worked very well with them in the past. This chair in front of you now, in front of the body now, is meant to strengthen the JR, and so, but yes, if you look at the commissioners now, I don't have a list, but there's a good spread of geographical representation from across the state.
Thank you, Representative, for answering my question.
Thank you so much. Move adoption of the amendment.
Mr. Leach sends up an amendment. The amendment is acceptable to the author. However, a record vote has been requested. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Holt voting aye. Show Mr. Little voting aye. Show Mr. Leach voting aye. Have all voted. Show Mr. King voting aye. Have all voted. There being 118 ayes, 20 nays, the amendment is adopted. Anyone wishing to speak on, for, or against SJR 27? Mr. Wu? The chair recognizes Mr. Wu in opposition to the resolution.
Thank you, members. I want y'all to pay attention to this, because this is what we were afraid of when we created this commission last time, that this would be used as a political tool in the future, that we would turn this into a political toy, that in the past, the way the law is currently written, you have provisions for a number of people to be on this committee, to be on this commission that represents a broad swath of judiciary. You would have members of the bar, selected by the bar. You would have one person from the district court, one person from an appellate court, and people picked by the Supreme Court, people picked by other places. And instead now, we're taking all that, throwing it out the window, and we're saying, well, we're just going to let the governor pick the majority of the commissioners. Here is the problem. If you have talked to your judges, and I guess this really only applies to Democratic judges because they're only going after Democratic judges. If you talk to your judges back in your hometowns, you talk to the judges in Harris County and Dallas, what they will tell you is Democratic judges face more ethical complaints, more scrutiny for doing the exact same thing as every other judge. That every little step that they take is being watched like a hawk, and that the slightest thing, people file complaints on them, people use this to go after them, and they are deadly afraid of making any comments, making rulings, whatever it is. This has been brought to my attention again and again by our local judiciary. This is the culmination of that. This is the point. This is the point, to take a separate branch of government that is supposed to be independent, that is supposed to be independent from us, supposed to be independent from the executive branch, and say you are now beholden to both. That you now are going to be overseen by people who are handpicked by the legislature and by the governor. This is very dangerous.
Mr. Speaker.
And if
Mr. Leach, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
I do not yield. Not to you.
The gentleman doesn't yield.
And this is a dangerous path for all of us. That we continuously take things that are not supposed to be political and we're making them political. Judicial branch, their oath of office, their ethical obligations under their rules tell them that they're not supposed to be political, they're not supposed to do all these things, they're supposed to stay out of this arena. And they absolutely try to do that as the best of their abilities. If you ever try to campaign with judges, you go to events and then they talk, and you say, well, why aren't you being a little harder on that issue? Why aren't you talking more about this or that? And the judges have to tell you, that's part of our ethics. All judges are forbidden from taking political stances and doing those kind of things because they're not supposed to, because they're supposed to be judges, they're supposed to be impartial. But here we are interjecting politics into it, giving the governor more and more power. How many times this session have we amended commissions, changed committees, and done all these things to hand increasingly more power to a single individual? Power that used to belong to us, power that used to belong to the courts, to the bar, to the Supreme Court. And it keeps happening. One day, it will come back to bite us. I urge you to vote no on SJR 27.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Leach, for
will the
what
gentleman
purpose?
yield for questions?
The gentleman does not yield. The chair recognizes Mr. Little for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I had not planned to speak on this. I had not planned to speak on this Senate joint resolution today, but what I want to take a little bit of time to tell you a personal anecdote as a practicing lawyer, and a reason that you should very carefully consider voting in favor of this bill. Several years ago, I submitted several years ago, I myself submitted a complaint to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. I'm not going to say what county this district judge was in, but this district judge had placed a shock belt, if you know what a shock belt is, on a defendant to control his conduct while he was in the courtroom, and had administered very painful shocks repeatedly to this defendant. I submitted a complaint to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. 3 years later, I got a letter to my house that said, "Thank you for your complaint. We're looking into it." That was it. We have a process on the State Commission for Judicial Conduct that is not working. It is itself now a star chamber. There is no way to know what is going on inside that commission, and there is no way for you to actually have some accountability about the decisions that commission is making. SJR 27 introduces some very needed reforms. And for those of you who are concerned this is a Republican power grab, it is most certainly not. If you take a look at who would be appointed to this commission, 6 of the individuals will be appointed by the Texas Supreme Court. They're going to be jurists, judges at all different levels. And then if you're concerned about who the governor is going to appoint, well, there are appointments already being made to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. The concern is that the work product that is coming out of the State Commission on Judicial Conduct is not what it should be. Oftentimes, we have complaints that are going unresolved for extended periods of time, and judges are not facing discipline for things that they do that are wrong. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we had a judge who violently choked and kicked his girlfriend out of his car while it was moving. It goes to a complaint process, and that complaint process is completely obscured from the public. There is no public accountability. It's not a meaningful system now. We have Representative Janice Hull, who before she served in the chamber, she served on the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. Our current Court of Criminal Appeals Judge, David Shank, also served on the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. The reports back from those who have served are that the process is simply not working, and SJR 27, I believe, represents some very meaningful and needed reforms.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for a question?
I certainly will.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you. How many members are on this commission?
Currently 13, I believe. Yes, 13.
13. I guess my concern was I looked through the bill, and I wondered, do we need a DEI amendment on here?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, I didn't think so.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Representative Dutton.
The chair recognizes Ms. Holt in favor of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise today not only as a legislator, but as someone who has held the solemn responsibility of serving on the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. That experience gave me a front row seat to the strengths and the shortcomings of our current system of judicial accountability. And it's from that perspective that I speak in support of SJR 27. This bill is not just a set of procedural tweaks. It's a bold, necessary step toward restoring public trust in our judiciary by ensuring that judges are held to the highest standards of integrity, transparency, and timeliness. Let me be clear, the vast majority of Texas judges serve honorably, but when misconduct does occur, the public deserves a system that is swift, fair, and visible. This bill delivers on that promise. It imposes clear timelines for how courts must handle motions for summary judgment. As someone who has received complaints stemming from judicial inaction, I can tell you delay is not a neutral act. It erodes confidence, it harms litigants, and it must be addressed. Secondly, this bill strengthens the Commission's ability to act decisively. It defines willful or persistent conduct with clarity. It empowers the Commission to impose administrative penalties for knowingly false complaints, protecting judges from abuse while preserving the public's right to be heard. Third, and perhaps most importantly, it brings sunlight to a process that too often operated in the shadows. By requiring public notice of certain reprimands, by mandating annual reports on judicial performance, and by creating a statewide judicial directory, we are making the system more transparent, more accountable, and more accessible to the people it serves. Colleagues, this bill reflects the lessons I learned on the Commission. that accountability and fairness are not in conflict, they are partners. That transparency is not a threat to judicial independence, it is its foundation. Let's pass this bill not just as
Mr. Speaker,
Ms.
as
Gervin Hawkins, for
lawmakers.
what purpose?
would the
In just a
gen-
moment, in just a moment.
Not at this time.
Let us pass this bill not just as lawmakers, but as stewards of justice. Let us send a message to every Texan that their courts are worthy of their trust. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield for questions.
Ms. Gervin Hawkins, for what purpose?
Will the gentlelady yield for questions?
The lady yields.
Thank you, Representative Holt. Your service was as a justice or a judge?
No, ma'am, I was a public member for 5 years.
So you're a public member. So this bill or amendment doesn't eliminate public members?
No, ma'am, it does not.
So it just add of how the
It-
judges will be.
It adds one more public member to the commission.
And so your service allow.
Excuse me, 2 more. It's 7 public members and 6 judges.
Awesome. So your service offered that external insight.
Yes, ma'am. We were assigned to view it from the public's perspective and to listen to the complaints accordingly.
So the demographics of the 13 members, could you share
Yes,
that
ma'am.
with us?
They strove in every instance to spread it out across the state of Texas according to districts, you know, so that only one per district judge. It didn't always work out that way because of just the availability of people, but that was the intent behind the appointments.
Right, but my specific question is, the demographics when you served was what? Gender-wise, ethnicity-wise,
I'm
and
sorry, I
statewide?
misunderstood your question. No, ma'am, I do not work in the governor's appointment office, so I cannot answer to that. I'm sorry.
So y'all didn't come together for meetings?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
So
Yes, I'm
what
from
did
the
you see?
Southeast Texas region, is where I'm
So
from.
what did you see when you saw all the members coming together, all 13?
I'm sorry, clarity?
When all the members came together, what was the demographic breakdown? Or you never
Are you
saw-
asking male, female, black, white? Is that what you're asking
Yes,
me?
yes, ma'am.
Well, it's hard to pin it down because people were coming in and off of the commission. I would have to say it was predominantly male. And then the demographics as far as race, we've had Hispanic members, we've had African American members, Anglo members. I believe those are the 3 ethnic demographics that, since I was on the commission.
So you're not advised until at any one time what that body looked like?
Well, yes, ma'am. I can tell you what it looked like while I was on the commission, which was from 2019 until December of this past year. In 2024, I resigned to join this body. And how many females? When I got off the commission, there were 3 females out of 13.
Thank you for answering my question,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Holt.
My pleasure.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Flores, for what purpose?
would the gentlelady yield, or perhaps my questions would be better reserved for the author when he closes? Would I have an opportunity to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
So I should wait? Okay, so thank you.
I don't move.
The chair recognizes Mr. Leach to close on the bill, on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, to address Representative Wood's comments, Representative Wu's comments, I encourage you not to be hoodwinked and led astray by someone who has not read the bill and has no idea what they're talking about. Representative Wu stood up here and said that we created this commission last session, and in fact, this commission has been established since 1965. And regularly, the legislature tweaks how the commissioners are appointed, what their jurisdiction is, what their authority is, and that's all we're doing here. Members, I haven't spoken to the governor or the governor's team about this. I've spoken with Senator Huffman, who drafted this. I've spoken with other senators, Republican and Democrat, in the Senate, where this bill was voted out 27-4, who are in support of this. This JR in front of you now is not partisan. This strengthens the judiciary. The Supreme Court members I've talked to, the other judges across the state at all levels are in support of this. And so, members, just don't be led astray by someone who has not read the bill and simply put, has no idea what they're talking about.
Mr. Speaker?
And is just reading talking points, giving them to
Ms. Flores,
giving
for
them
what
to someone
purpose?
else.
Will the gentleman yield
Yes.
for a question?
Yes.
Thank
Gentleman
you.
yields.
Speaking to that point, Chairman Leach, I got confused with the dialogue, and then I think you read some provisions in the committee substitute that
Right.
made some changes. What is the status of the State Bar of Texas appointees? Can you clarify that for me? Because I got a little
Yeah,
confused.
so there are no State Bar of Texas appointees. They're appointed by the Supreme Court and by the governor, 6 and 7.
But there used to be State Bar of Texas appointees, correct?
Yes.
And those are no longer, and
Correct.
they normally appoint the public members, or who is in charge?
I'm not aware of that. I don't have the answer to that.
Okay, so now the governor has 7 and the court has 6. Okay, so, okay, well, that clarifies it for me. I'm a strong believer in the separation of powers
I am
and
too.
Supreme Court having power, and I realize, I agree with the public member, Representative Holt, in that transparency and making sure that it's efficient and that it works well, and changes are obviously needed, but I'm a little bit concerned about the imbalance of that power and giving more authority to the governor to appoint more appointees than the Supreme Court. So I'm really.
Well, again, even right now, Representative Flores, and you've sat on our committee, you've heard the testimony, we've talked extensively about this. Even right now, the Senate has consent power over the nominations to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. As much as sometimes I might disagree with senators or wish they treated my own legislation differently, I trust our senators on this, all 31 of them, to review the candidates to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct and to get them right. And so, again, this is not partisan. It should not be partisan. It's not partisan to me. I don't know why it is to Representative Wu, but that's the first complaint I've heard from him reading off someone else's talking points. The JR is very straightforward. I believe this strengthens the judiciary. It serves the people of Texas well, and I would hope to have your favorable consideration and support.
Well, thank you for answering my question. I'm going to have to really think hard about this.
Thank you.
Now, I get it that the legislature is having, the Senate has confirmation authority, so that brings in a third branch of government into it. So, and I know that I worked at the State Bar a long time, and there was comedy between the court and the legislature and how the State Bar, which is part of the judicial branch, was, worked. So I agree that there should be balance and sometimes tension between the branches of government.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's well said. And maybe what this does is it creates some tension. That yes, there are separate co-equal branches of government, but in all cases, the branches can and should hold. If there's another branch of government that is usurping the rights of the people and/or willfully neglecting their duties and not serving the people of Texas and not doing their job and not showing up for work, then there ought to be guardrails in place to hold those people accountable, whether it's executive, legislative, or judicial, and that's what this JR does. And remember that the people of Texas still have to vote on this in a constitutional amendment, the statewide proposition election in November.
That is true. I do have some concerns about partisanship because obviously certain branches are a certain party, and that's a concern for some folks. But maybe the tides will change and things will be different. But nevertheless, I'll reserve my right to
Thank you.
to breathe before I press
Thanks,
my button.
Representative Flores. Appreciate you.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Gonzalez, for what purpose?
does the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
There is a clear indicator that we need to make sure our judicial system works very functionally and effectively and fairly. Is that correct?
Yes.
My only ask is that if you're going to get up there and ask members to vote for a bill, that you don't say something like, that we should not be hoodwinked by another member that said who didn't read the bill. I don't think being offensive to another member of our colleagues is helpful to this conversation, and my ask is that you stop saying those words, because you've said them 3 times already from that front mic.
Thank you, Representative Gonzalez.
Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
Would the gentleman
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
for questions? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
The gentleman-
I know that's not the subject of this bill, but we have been for some time trying to increase judiciary pay. And does this bill
Go ahead. Sorry.
does the passage of this bill in any way relate to that?
No. No, there's nothing, there's no judicial compensation aspect to the JR in front of you now.
In front of-
There are other bills that we will hear today that will deal with judicial compensation and accountability.
And so they're not, those bills aren't tied to this bill either directly or indirectly?
I'm hopeful that this JR will pass so that our Senate counterparts will take our judicial compensation proposals seriously and work collaboratively with us to deliver on both.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Leach. I did want to go through a couple of things, and kind of like Representative Little said, as lawyers, some of us are familiar with Judicial Conduct Commission. Just to clarify, currently there are, as we've heard, there are public members already on the commission doing evaluations of our judiciary.
Correct.
And in this section, one of the things that seems to me is the definition that the judge is engaging in willful or persistent conduct that's clearly inconsistent with the proper performance of a judge's duties and or other good cause, the commission effectively can issue a public reprimand. Is that right?
Yes.
But it looks to me like every judge is given one chance that if they have not engaged in that conduct or actually been before the commission, there's still the opportunity for a private reprimand or the ability to go through training or whatever things. So am I correct that this bill is not a public gotcha in all circumstances?
No, it's not a public gotcha. This is now look. There are some judges, Representative Johnson, as you know full well, that need to be got. That need to have a public reprimand from the Commission on Judicial Conduct. But there is an opportunity for a private. I would say reprimand may be too strong of a word. It may be a course correction if the Commission determines that there's a judge that needs.
And that could still be private.
Correct.
Right.
One
So
time.
if the commission and the membership of the commission finds that this judge is in a situation where they want to work through something with them, and there's the ability for them to be able to maintain and continue the functioning of the position, that does not have to be put in a public setting.
Say that again, Representative Johnson. I'm sorry.
Again, I just want to clarify that one of the things I had heard at some point about this legislation was that everything was going to become public. And I want to make sure that I'm reading this right, that is not accurate. There's still the opportunity for some private action, which may be appropriate in many circumstances,
So
correct?
if you look at if you look at page 1 of the JR, lines 14 through, it's really lines 9 through 16, but specifically line 14 relating to the order of private admonition.
Okay.
And so
And then-
I think that's the legalese, but I think of it more as a course correction privately. Because, Representative Johnson, if there is a judge that needs to be publicly reprimanded that is intentionally not doing their duty or has willful neglect of their duty or something more egregious than that, then the public ought to know. The public ought to know, and I believe the people of Texas have a right to know, just like they do about the legislative and the executive. That is true for the judicial branch as well.
And this bill still maintains those levels of, if you will, due process
Yes.
for the judge, for all the appropriate parties to do that review.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Thank
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I move passage of SJR 27.
Members, strict enforcement has been requested on all SJRs. Members must vote from your desks, and you cannot vote for any other member. The question occurs on the adoption of SJR 27. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. There being 97 ayes, 33 nays, The resolution passes to third reading. Mr. Leach.